G'day, how the bloody hell are you? Welcome everybody to episode number 208 of the Average Man podcast. We're doing a solo podcast today, which is a little bit of a change. I've had plenty of guests rolling through over the last few weeks, but I just wanted to sit with you guys a little bit today, reintroduce myself to some of the new listeners, because there's been a few over the last couple of weeks, probably a couple of months, and just do a nice little reintroduction and a story to let you guys know a little bit about who I am. So on today's episode, there'll be a bit of a story. It's called A Hero's Journey. Not saying that I'm a hero, it's just the name of it. Don't blame me, just repeating what I've been taught. And it's a good way to really let you guys know who I am, where I've come from, what I've been through, what I'm aiming to do, and hopefully just give you more of an insight into my story that you can perhaps resonate with, because again, there is some new people listening along at the moment. So first of all, I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what I'm doing right now, where I am and how it's all going. I'm currently in far north Queensland, just out of Cairns, in my caravan. We're traveling around in the caravan with my family. Again, if we're going to do the introduction, let's do it from the beginning, right? I'm Dave. I'm a 41-year-old dad. I spent the last 20 years of my life in the construction industry. I'm a carpenter and a builder by trade. I've started an online business since traveling around, and I've also joined a group of men called the Legacy Brotherhood, where we are building businesses, helping men get healthy, get fit, dealing with mindset, training, dealing with, helping men deal with emotional distractions, helping process emotions better, helping people, again, get fit, but that means mentally fit as well. Build businesses up, be surrounded by a supportive group of people. Really just trying to give men the tools and the community and the support to move forward and be the best versions of themselves that they could possibly be. And that's what this podcast is also about as well. It's kind of built into its own thing over the last few years. I started it just to talk to people about who I am, where I'm from, and what I'm passionate about. And I wanted to inspire people, anybody, to just get out there and have a crack. And that's become more specific over the last few years. I've been on my own journey, as we're about to find out today as well. And I really have a deep passion and care for, for families, right? I believe in the family unit. I believe it's very important for families to be together, for dads to be a part of that family. And I have a real passion for helping other dads, as we just spoke about, be a better version of themselves, because it's hard, mate. It's a hard job. There's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of pressures. It's a very thankless job. You just need to get up and keep doing it day in, day out. And, there's not really much time in that for you to fall off the wagon, have rough days where you can't perform. Let your problems and your troubles overwhelm you, because it's a direct knock-on effect to the people that you care about, right? So it's a big job, and just as hard for mothers as well. That's, I want people who are listening to realise that I know that, and I have a huge respect for women and for women and for mothers, and for my wife and my mother and my sister and the people in my life. Like, a huge respect for women. You'll hear me talk a lot about men and what I want for men and what I'm trying to do for men. That doesn't mean that I think that I'm devaluing women's role in this at all. It just means that my journey, my role, is to speak to men, right? And there's plenty of women out there who will speak to women, and I do hope that what I'm saying resonates for the women that listen along as well, because you're living alongside the men, right? So we're all tied in this together. But my experience and the place that I come from, obviously being a dad myself, is really targeted at sharing my experience with other men, and hopefully helping them along the way on their journey too. So currently in this caravan, traveling the country. I've been off work for 10 months now, and with the online business, that's going to continue into the future next year as well. Probably will pull up and do a bit of physical carpentry work down the Sunshine Coast over the next couple of months, coming into a busy period, Christmas and whatnot, and we've got some big plans for next year, so that's really going to help keep everything afloat. But my passion is this online business, is this podcast, and there's other things I want to build in the future moving forward from here. And We've been looking sort of for a new home on the way around. We don't know where we want to live. We're not going back to the town, Port Hedland, that we came from. I mean, I'll pass through there and see my friends, but we're not going back there to live. So we really are looking for a new home along the way too. This so far, Far North Queensland, has been the place that we as a family resonate with the most. It's got the climate that we love. It's got mountains, the rainforests. They have beautiful beaches, and we have been swimming in some of those beaches as well. Certain times of year, certain beaches, you got to pick them, talk to the locals, figure that sort of stuff out. You know, they do have crocs and stingers up here, cane toads, all sorts of creepy crawlies, big snakes, big spiders. So it's not for everybody. But what we've found is that there's a really good mix of people here as well. It's a city, but it's a small city, but it's 180,000 people, sort of quite spread out. So there's no big, densely populated CBD, which we don't like, but there's a CBD that's got everything you need: a big lagoon, big pool, restaurants, bars, all the stuff that you would need, and then some other big shopping centres spread out around the place. You're an hour and a half from the Daintree, you know, you're half an hour, 40 minutes from the mountain ranges. You know, it's just a really beautiful spot. And I'll be honest with you, what we've found in some of the other smaller rural centres around the country is that quite often they're kind of, they don't really have the kind of people, a lot of the kind of people in them that we would want to spend too much of our time with. There's kind of a backwater feel to a lot of the country towns and rural centres around our country, to be perfectly honest with you, and that's not how I want to spend too much of my time. So what we found about Cairns is it's got a really good mix. You know, you're always going to get some of the backwater type characters kicking around in these rural areas, but there's a really good mix of just normal people, because I need to be surrounded by people. As you guys know, you should know that saying of you are the 5 closest people you surround yourself with. You are the sum of those 5 people. So if you live in a place where it's just kind of full of, for lack of a better word, hicks, it's not a super inspiring place to live your life and to start a business and to run a family. And, you know, in my opinion, if you're living in a city centre, it can be very, very hectic, rat race, all squashed in together, wasting a lot of time in traffic, and that kind of thing elevates my stress levels and gets me sort of frustrated as well, and I'm not the best version of myself when I'm living in an area like that. So the cities aren't really for me. But finding a place like this, which has kind of got a bit of all of it, it's looking pretty good. But there is the climate and the natural, you know, disasters to consider when you live in a place like Far North Queensland. Personally, what my dream is, what my goal is, and what I'm working towards over the next 5 years is to set up a few different spots. I could set up a house up here in Far North Queensland that we could bed and breakfast out when or Airbnb out when we're not using it. I could set up a house down in the southwest of WA for the summer months when it's warm and you can surf and you can swim and you're outdoors and it's beautiful down there. But it gets really cold from like March on, and then I could probably do another spot. I'm not sure where that third spot would be yet, but we'll keep looking and keep investigating. So that would be my dream, and that is actually what I'm working to build over the next 5 years. There's all sorts of reasons why you can't do that. Trust me, I know. I'm not an idiot. I understand the fact about cost of living, getting loans for these things. You know, banks don't like people that are self-employed. Like, there's all these roadblocks, if you will, and people are quick to tell you about those roadblocks, and I do understand them. I'm not an idiot, but I also like to live my life with a bit more of a, okay, there's the roadblock, how do we get around it kind of mentality, rather than, oh, there's a roadblock, can't do it kind of mentality. Do you know what I mean? If you surround yourself with and talk to people and pick the brain of successful people and people who are doing cool shit in their life, you will see this as a theme. They're not like, you can't do that. Because people will tell you that, oh, you can't do that, it's not going to work. And they'll have a list of reasons why it's not going to work. I'm doing inverted commas if you just listen to this. Not going to work just means it's going to be harder. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be challenges. Not going to work just means I can't see a way for me to make it work, so I'm going to tell you it won't work. It doesn't really mean it's not going to work. It just means that, you know, those people aren't willing to overcome the obstacles, or they don't have the confidence in themselves, or they don't have the skill set to overcome those obstacles. And neither do I. But I understand the concept of surrounding yourself with people who can help you achieve what you want to achieve, and not just giving up on something because it's hard, because there's a roadblock. So that's what I want to do moving forward in my life. I like the idea of continuing to travel around. With the way online education is now, we can find pretty good options to keep our kids, getting a high caliber education as they move into high school. We've got another couple of years left of primary school anyway, so we can sort that out. We're doing homeschooling currently and the kids are doing great. Moving into high school, we may need to outsource the schooling, but again, it's all things you can figure out, man. It is. It's an alternative way of living. And I was having a discussion with someone about this not my father-in-law actually, about this the other night. We were having a discussion around the fact that the cost of living is obviously bad. It's a negative thing, but there's some positives around it. The younger generation are now thinking outside the box as far as how they want to live their lives, how they want to live. There's a lot of people traveling the country. There's a lot of people who are doing, living the nomadic kind of lifestyle and getting these great experiences because they're kind of forced out of the market. And while doing that, there's a lot of people who have started these amazing careers as content creators, as entrepreneurs, as just running online businesses, providing a service, fixing a problem for people online that pays really, really good money. And they've found their calling, and they've found this great quality of life where they're traveling around and and making great money while doing it. And they were kind of forced into that lifestyle because of this cost of living crisis. So there's positives wherever you go. You just need to be willing to look for them. So as far as what we're going to do next, so that's where we are now, up in far north Queensland. Excuse me, I'll adjust the mic. We're up here in far north Queensland, and really enjoying it. But we've decided to head down to South Queensland for the Christmas sort of period. So November, December will be around the Sunshine Coast. Still looking for some more house sit opportunities while we're there as well. We've got a couple booked in. January we're going to spend travelling New South Wales and catching up with some family. And then February, March and into April we were thinking maybe Sunshine Coast again, but we might even come back up to Cairns and stay up here for another couple of months, and I'll do another couple of months of physical work. As I said, we've got a few big plans next year, so to continue travelling it's going to be good for us to sit down and really just stock the coffers up and help subsidise the online business in its early stages as well. So mate, the travelling life has been great for us. Hard a lot of the times. I mean, for instance, yesterday morning, it was a Saturday, so instead of getting up before 5 a.m, I had a bit of a sleep in, and I was woken at 20 past 5 to a knocking on the caravan door. I didn't comprehend what was going on. I was so tired when I woke up. Someone's knocking on the door. What the hell's going on? Swung my feet over the side of bed, stood up in a puddle of water, in a puddle of water next to my bed. And now I don't know how much you know about caravans, but that's not good. That's not supposed to happen. So I went to the door, opened it, and there's just a river poured out of the door of the caravan when I opened it. And the guy goes, "Hey mate, you got water pissing out of your caravan, not sure what's going on." Oh no, bloody hell, we had something similar happen recently, and it was to do with the toilet. So I ran around to that side of the caravan outside. I'm trying to look for the hose to turn it off. I didn't know where the bloody hose was because I was so tired and discombobulated. I'm fumbling around the place, turned the water off, and went and did some investigating, and it turns out the flush mechanism on the toilet had just stuck itself on, like it burnt out, and it was just on, so the toilet was flushing continually all night, and the bowl filled up, bowl overflowed, flooded the entire caravan into all the bottom drawers and shelves and cabinets, and the electricity, the 240 volt short circuited because some circuits got wet, and complete bloody nightmare, mate. And it was shit water. It was shit water. I mean, it was water that had come from a toilet bowl. There wasn't shit sitting in the toilet bowl, but that is where the shit goes. So it wasn't the best, man. And we spent half a day sorting that out. No permanent damage. I've got a part to replace on Monday when some of the caravan shops are open. And sometimes shit like that happens. Sometimes things like that happen, mate. It's not all sunshine and lollipops when you're living in a caravan traveling around with your family, but super worth it. Such great experiences. We've become really tight as a family, which was the whole point, as far also to see the country and to have an adventure, but to become really a really close-knit family, which is what we've done. So look, I'm really passionate about the lifestyle. I'm really passionate about helping other men. I have found this online business and this Legacy Brotherhood group, which is so powerful, and I'm so excited to share it with other men. the fact that I am working my way out of the construction industry, and I'm going to live my life in a completely different way the next decade plus of my life is super exciting. I want to share that with as many people as I can, because I just believe that for the men that want to do their life differently, they don't want to be away from their family for huge portions of their life, especially with the young kids. For men that don't want to just trade hours for dollars, they want to figure out how to swap time, how to provide value for money, or solve solutions in an online capacity for money. There's other ways to do it. So I'm really passionate to help share other men do that. Dude, I'm just a chippy. I'm just a normal bloody chippy. I spent the last 20 years of my life in the construction industry. You'll hear a little bit more about my journey soon. But I found the right people, which is key. And I've got an open mind, a good work ethic, and I'm really persistent and consistent with when I lock into something, and I'm changing my entire bloody life in a few short months. So that's why you'll hear me screaming about this shit from the rooftops. So as far as my story, I'm going to take you back, and there's going to be some parts of this story that I haven't spoken about publicly before. I've told this story once publicly. There's a bit of a test run with the men in the Legacy Brotherhood, and there'll be some things in here that I haven't spoken about, partially because I have been ashamed of them in my past, partially because they weren't beneficial to my story at the time when I was just in the construction industry, when that was who I was and what I was doing. They weren't beneficial. So, and also because I don't resonate with the person that did those things and lived that life, 15 plus years ago. So they weren't relevant, but they are now, because it's kind of my life's coming full circle of what I've been through and what I've done over the last 20 years. So it is relevant who I am now and where I've come from and how that all transpired. So I'm going to take it back. I'm going to dial you back 23 years ago. I'm 41 now. Dial it back to young 18-year-old Davo, mate. I was certainly aimless and reckless. Came out of high school, and I really only went to high school in year 11 and 10 just to socialise, catch up with my mates, hang out and pick up girls. I wasn't there for an education at all. Sorry, mum and dad. It was an expensive private school they'd sent me to. Year 11 and 12, they already know that. Year 11 and 12 was just me fucking around, really wasting time. And I came out of school aimless. I made some pretty bad decisions straight out the gate and had a breakup with my first serious girlfriend, and that sent me on my own little downward spiral. I was drinking all the time, partying every weekend. You guys know that script, right? And then I started taking drugs, dabbling in drugs. I took everything. I tried everything. Smoked a lot of weed from the time I was 16, but I got involved in everything else as well. Party drugs, pills, even like meth, what they call meth now. It was kind of a shitty time to transition into that lifestyle because people were using speed in the 90s, and then when I graduated to that party drug stage of my life, they changed it out with the rocks, which is actually meth. We didn't know a lot about it back then. And that's how I was, living my life, and those weekends would spill out into the week. Tuesday, Wednesdays, I wouldn't come good until Wednesday, Thursday, and then go do it all again, sort of on Fridays. And I even started selling drugs. Sold weed for about 8 years. I started selling the party drugs as well to fund what we were doing on the weekends. I wasn't making money. I wasn't like some big time dealer, but I was selling drugs. And I did for a couple of years to fund what we were doing on the weekend. During that time, I got myself a bit later I got myself a mortgage, but I couldn't afford it, so I used it to supplement my income and keep us afloat financially in that party era. And then that was my life for a few years, right? Running amok, just being a complete fool, getting in fights all the time, and the drugs and the drinking, and just really had no direction, didn't know what I was doing, mate. And this is when I met a ray of light, my current wife. I met a girl who was the only person I knew that wasn't doing what everybody else in my life was doing, wasn't running amok, wasn't taking drugs, wasn't just aimless and reckless. And for the first time after meeting her, my now wife, Emma, for the first time after meeting her, I decided I needed to take my life seriously. I needed to start thinking about my future and planning. And that was the first time I'd ever felt like that. I knew I needed to stop selling the drugs. I knew I needed to get a decent job. I was just doing shitty labouring jobs and whatever. And I knew I needed to really start sorting my life out. I knew that I would have to cut out a lot of bad friends and a lot of the rot because of that, the people I had surrounded myself with. And we spoke about it earlier. The people you surround yourself with, you are the sum of those people. And I was becoming the sum of some pretty nefarious and rat-baggy type of characters, mate. So that's who I was trying to impress. So, there was, when I met my wife, my girlfriend, I was 22, I guess, by this point. There was times when I used to have to ride my push bike down to the payphone to call her because I had no license, because I'd lost my license. I had no phone credit because I was a bloody loser. I'd ride a push bike down to a payphone to call my girlfriend. Right, this is who I was. This was the path I was on. So I then got myself a job as a hammer hand with a local carpentry group that I'd run into, and I worked my way up with those guys to carpenter, which was the first time I'd achieved anything in my life. It was a really good feeling, good group of guys too. And I also went back to TAFE, got myself a carpentry certificate, so it was all legitimate. And I cut out a lot of the people that I'd been hanging out with, which proved to be a good idea because some of the guys I was surrounding myself with, my best mate for probably 10 years. There was 3 of us who were tight together, and one of those guys ended up being stabbed to death by a junkie at the front of some shithole house on Boxing Day a few years back. Another one of the guys that I was hanging out with quite a lot back then, another legend of a guy, but he fell off a cliff at Karajini while under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and just just living a reckless lifestyle. Another guy I was hanging out with quite a lot, he's 10 years older than me, he's now got permanent brain injury because he had an aneurysm, drug and alcohol induced aneurysm. Other guys have died in car crashes, and all sorts of horrible things happening to the kind of people I was surrounding myself with. So I made the right decision getting those people out of my life. And I'd by this point worked my way up to carpenter, was working with this group of guys who were really good for me. I'd cut the drinking and the drugs down to a manageable level, but I was still running a bit of a muck, and I needed more distance between me and my old life. So my girlfriend and I got married in 2011, and then the week later we moved up to Port Hedland. So we had a honeymoon up in Port Hedland, mate, which was something special. It's a different experience for those of you that don't know Port Hedland. It's a mining town. We moved up there the very next week with $5,000 in our pocket, which was the most amount of money we'd ever had to our names at that point. And mate, this was a time for new dreams. It was a new life for me. I began exercising regularly. I started really caring about my diet. I decided to become really dedicated to being the best chippy that I could be. The company I worked for at the time, they had about 30 or 40 chippies working for them, and I had made it my goal to become the best chippy there. And I definitely became one of the best chippies at that company. I worked my way up through the ranks, became a leading hand there, learned a heap of skills. I learned a heap about myself, a heap about carpentry, and it was a really good time for me. I also discovered podcasts during this time. It was about 2014. I discovered podcasts, which now they're everywhere and everybody knows what podcasts are, but they weren't a thing back then. I didn't know what they were, and it was a really pivotal point for me because it gave me access to these incredible people, guys who were really successful, people who had a completely different way of looking at life that I'd never been exposed to that way of thinking before. So it gave me get a chance to sit in the room with these really, really inspirational, successful, incredible people, and learn how they think, and then apply some of that to my life. I started doing audio books as well, and just filling my brain with all this kind of knowledge that I didn't have before. We also had our first kid, little Shady, and soon after that we moved back down to Perth for a couple of years, and I started my carpentry business, Driftwood Carpentry. So it was a big growth period this time, 5 or 6 years was since we left Perth. It was a huge growth period for me. And it was really fertile ground. You know, I had the right mindset. I was very positive. I dedicated myself to my health, to my family, to my business. Those three things were just everything that I did during that time period. But I just didn't have the business skills to really make the business pop. You know, I had the carpentry skills, I didn't have the business skills. And as far as family, there was a few unfortunate events that transpired that would really derail my family life for the coming years. So on Boxing Day in 2016, give me a second, I'm gonna have a drink of water before I get into this bit. On Boxing Day in 2016, we were getting ready to head out to a family event for the day, and I was packing some food and some eskies inside. My wife went outside to move the car forward so we could load those things up in the car, and our little boy Shady followed her out. Like, she closed the door behind her but it didn't latch. He just followed her out, pushed the door open. She wasn't aware he was there. Jumped in the car to move it forward, and as she was moving the car forward, he trotted around right next to the car, and she ran him over in the Nissan Patrol. She felt a hump under the tyre and she thought she'd run over a cat or something, one of our cats. Opened her drive, she was in the driver's side, obviously, opened the door and looked behind her, and stuck between the front and the back wheel, but underneath the back wheel, as if it had driven up over him, was our little boy, Shady. I just heard a God Almighty scream and didn't know what was happening. I ran outside and I couldn't see what was going on from the passenger side of the car. My wife was just screaming, "I've run him over, I've run him over." I said, who? She said, "Shady, I've run him over." And my heart sunk. I thought that she meant he was dead, you know, at that point. I ran around to her side of the car and I could see him underneath the back tyre. Both his legs and one of his arms was between his legs, and he was just silently just squirming there. No noise. It was really weird. And she didn't know what to do. She says, "What do I do? What do I do?" I said, "Hop in the car and just slowly reverse off him, and they'll tell you when to stop, obviously, so the front wheel doesn't hit him as well." She hopped in the car. She said, "What do I do?" I said, "Go backwards slowly." So she released the car, let it roll backwards off him. And as soon as the pressure was on him, he started screaming and wailing. I said, "Stop there." I said, "Stop." I grabbed him out off the floor, and his little legs were just destroyed. They were like tyre marks on him. They were red and kind of flat. He looked all fucked up. I thought his legs were broken for sure. But, you know, I was just worried about his internal bleeding in his organs. We were both a mess. We didn't know what to do. Our neighbours heard the screaming, and they came over. One of them was a nurse as well, like my wife is, but she was in no state to be, you know, guiding us around the park at this point in time. So the neighbour came over and she helped settle the situation, called the ambulance, and the ambulance came and took him to hospital. We went into the hospital with him, and by a miracle, you know, thank the Lord that he's just had one broken leg, and everything else was fine about him. You know, those little rubbery bones of his and these big thick sandals he was wearing, I think saved him a lot, mate, because that whole tyre was on him, his little body right up to his chest. So he survived that, and he got over it, and it fucked me up for a couple of months thinking about it, flashbacks and whatnot, but I got over it too because he was happy and he was healthy. But my wife never really got over that, you know. It's different for women, and she was also the one in the car too, so it's a different thing. Then 8 months later, after that incident, our little girl Heidi was born, my little princess, and she nearly died at birth. She wasn't breathing for the first 8 minutes. The room was full of doctors and nurses, and they were going to put her on life support because she wasn't breathing. The oxygen, everything wasn't working. They were about to call it and put her on an incubation machine and put her on life support, which is not a good outcome once a newborn baby goes on that. And then at the last minute, she took a breath and started breathing, and they rushed her off to the emergency care unit. And we didn't get to see much of her for the first couple of weeks. They'd come and get us and tell us when it was time to go feed her, and she was under constant monitoring and on oxygen and all sorts of shit. And it was a really weird time, and I know other parents have had a worse time than that, but it was a big hit for us. And then that issue continued for months afterwards. We had to keep going back to the hospital. She spent more time in Princess Margaret Children's Hospital because she would just stop breathing and turn blue, and we didn't fucking know why. And then you wake up in the middle of the night wondering if she was dead, and it was pretty stressful, man. And that compounded on the accident we'd had with my boy as well, and really sent, my wife particularly on a downward spiral as far as her mental health. It hit her really hard. So with that financial stress mounting and these other issues that had popped up in her family life and city life seemingly exacerbating all that for us, we decided to move back to Port Hedland. We moved back to Port Hedland. In a lot of ways it was a really good decision, but the problems kept building in the background. There was a lot of issues my wife had already been facing. She had some recent diagnoses around ADHD and now the PTSD because of the trauma from what had happened with the two kids, and that whole situation kept building and the pressure kept mounting. And this was about the time I started my podcast. I just really needed something to keep me positive, something to set my goals on, something as an artistic, creative outlet for me, and something to link me to the kind of life that I really wanted to live, as opposed to the life that I probably was living. So I really set my sights on the podcast, which was a great outlet for me, and I also dreamt up this life of traveling the family in a caravan, traveling the country in a caravan with my family. And those two things, proved to be a lot really good things for me to hold on to over the coming years. I really held on to those things, and they got me through some really tough times. Things started heating up with my work, and I'd also decided to do a diploma in building and construction at the same time. And I doubled down on my health, the podcast, this vision of traveling the country. But things really did become more intense at my work, and the screws were really turned. I was definitely burning the candle at both ends. So during the last couple of years we were up in Port Hedland, things had deteriorated with my wife's mental health, and she had a really shitty environment at work, terrible manager, which actually ended up in a extended bullying claim, which turned into a workers' comp claim, along with the stress and the PTSD she was already experiencing. This drove her down a really dark road, and she ended up having some admissions at Perth Mental Health Clinic over that time period, which is 1,800 kilometres away from Port Hedland where we were living, and that left me to be dad, mum, homemaker, worker, construction manager, all these things at one time, and there was a lot on my plate, and she was obviously dealing with her own demons at the same time, and then the guilt of not being there for the family, and it was a really dark time for us, mate. I stayed strong on the health and the fitness and the goal of travelling the country with the family, and kept the podcast going, and I'm glad I did, because those things kept me moving forward. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot, where things aren't going right in your life and the wheels are falling off and you're depressed and you just can't be bothered. Please, mate, don't stop. Just keep going forward, because you just go through the motions of the things you're supposed to be doing. This is where discipline comes in. You just keep doing them, even if you don't feel like doing it, even if there's no joy in it. Just keep doing the things are good for you. When you come out the other side, you don't have to start from scratch, because when I come out the other side of this, I was already doing all the right things. It was just like, off to the races, here we go. Let's build momentum now on the things I've already been doing. But the candle was burning at both ends, mate. A lot of guilt around not having enough time for the kids, even though I do think I managed to do a good job of being dad and mum and whatever else I had to do at certain times, and be as supportive as I could for my wife. But there was definitely a rift between us that developed during this time period. It was a very, very tricky time period, mate. Then just in the nick of time, things had been mounting for years, and we wrapped up, and we'd put enough money away to come and do this journey around Oz, mate. And it was a really chaotic right till the end. We packed up our entire lives in about a week, and worked sort of right down to the wire. Packed up our entire life, threw all these things out, sold this stuff, packed up everything we had either in the caravan car or one box trailer, which we sent down to Perth, and got out of there, mate, with some help from some friends and some family. Mother-in-law came up to help us pack as well, and it was just a really hectic time. And we left Port Hedland, drove out about a week before Christmas, and then over the next 3 weeks, my nervous system started to relax and calm down, and I got into the swing of not doing all that work anymore, and not living that life anymore, and being around with my family, and And you know, the weight of all that stress, the burnout, really started to become obvious to me at that point. It was kind of like I'd run out of energy at the end of it, you know, and I sat with that for a couple of months. And then after a couple of months, I began to start, you know, we were on this trip, which was good, and I had family around, and I wasn't doing the job that was stressing me out, but we still had a lot of issues that we were working through, you know, and a lot of rebuilding to do. But I started getting that little itch again. The motor turned over again for me after a couple of months of decompressing. And I started thinking about what I was going to achieve this year, what the future was going to look like, and what direction I was going to take my life, and what's going to be best for my family, and that translated into what was going to be best for my wife. And so, you know, that's about the time I realized I really began to start rebuilding myself and to become the man I wanted to be, because I feel I'd become a shadow of who I wanted to be. And then that's when I met Jordan from the Legacy Brotherhood and got on this new journey with this new business. And I am a completely changed, reignited man at this point. The man that sits here in front of you now talking is a man who is on fire with passion. I'm a man who has all the problems that normal people have, and the residual problems of the life I was living last year that we're still putting the pieces back together from and fixing. But I am on fire, mate. I am passionate. Things are going better with me and my family than they have in a long time. I have this vision, this goal, this purpose, these people around me, and you know, I'm on the next leg of my journey, which is going to be the most exciting and most epic version of the journey of my life to date, mate. So I'm really excited to be where I am right now, talking to the people I'm talking to, sharing my story with you. Glad you guys are here, coming along for the journey with me. But just wanted to share about who I am, where I've come from, or, you know, warts and all, because I try to be pretty open and honest and authentic definitely on my podcast and on my social media as well. But I also try to bring a positive energy, because it is who I am. If you'd have met me a year ago, you wouldn't have known all that was going on. It wasn't like I lived in this desperate depression. That wasn't how I lived my life. I'm a positive guy, I really am, and I focus on the positive things because there's always positives. But this was happening in the background, and it was wearing me down, and it was burning me out. So I definitely bring the positive vibe on my social media, but I try to be real and honest. So I just like people to know that that's who I am, that's where I come from, that's my story. You may resonate with that, you may not realize I went through all those things, mate. And the point is that I am just an average bloke. I am just the average man. I do have the same problems that people have in their lives, and I do believe that any of you men out there listening, women as well, there's a pathway for women that we actually have opened up through the Driven Women's Company as well, the Driven Women's Co. as well. But anybody out there listening who's been through the shit, who knows they need to get better people around them, who knows they need to make changes in their life, who knows that they're not living the kind of life they want to actually live, who knows that there's something better for them out there, but doesn't know what it is, doesn't know how to get started, doesn't know, you know, where to begin. I want to inspire you to dig deep into yourself and figure out what it is you want. I want to inspire you to get around the people who can help you get there. Whatever it is, it may not be what I'm doing in the community that I'm in, but whatever it is you want in your life, find who the people who are doing it and find a way to get around them, and then start doing the behaviors, start doing the things that they are doing, because it is the behaviors that will change your life. So I hope that resonates with you people, man, because this is just who the bloody hell I am. Just an average Aussie bloke, dad, husband, trying to have a crack, trying to build a better life for me and for my family moving forward. I think we've got tough times in our economy and in our country in the coming years. I think that the cost of living is going to continue to go up, and I don't believe the wage is going to follow it. And I know the Australian dollar is going to continue to go down. So, not to mention things like automation coming, jobs are currently jobs now that you can do as an entry-level job. They won't be available to you in 10, 20, 30 years' time. They won't be available for our kids. And labouring jobs are getting taken by people from, you know, foreign countries who are willing to work for less money than people who live in Australia, and send a lot of that money home to other countries as well. So the world as we know it is changing. The Australian dream is dead. If you think you're just going to work till you're 60 or 70 now and retire on $1 million and live your life out, it's not going to work like that, mate. The lucky few who manage to put it together with a 9-to-5 job and then actually not miss out on their life You know, they are going to be the lucky few. So we need to do things differently moving forward if we want to actually have a good life, a good chance at life, a good second innings, set our kids up for success throughout their lives as well. There's so many things going on. It's a changing world. I'm a 41-year-old carpenter dad, and I'm figuring it out, so you bloody can too, mate. So I hope that story resonates with people, mate. And, you know, anyone that wants to get hold of me and have a chat about this stuff, more than open and willing, and get hold of me wherever it is you contact me, Facebook, Instagram. You know, if you know me personally, shoot me a message, whatever, mate. I'm here to talk to people and to catch up, and hope that my story can help other people express themselves and find out what the bloody hell it is they want to do with their lives, and get themselves around the people that can help them get there. That's it. That's I think that's enough for today, mate. That was the sole purpose of today, was to just catch up, reintroduce myself, tell a bit about my story, and really just, like, a big part of what I want to do on the podcast, what I am doing on the podcast, is I believe that I'm a man's man. I'm a real man. I'm a man with strong values, strong personality. Physically, I keep myself strong, fit, and healthy as well. I believe I am, you know, very much what a man is supposed to be. And I think that there's flies buzzing around me. Bloody caravan is stuck in here. And I believe that other men who are similar to me, who are in the same industry as me, who resonate with me, may not have been shown that it's okay to be a real man, but to also talk about your feelings, to be vulnerable, to open yourself up, to put yourself out there. People haven't been shown that, and we've had some shitty role models in the past, and I personally believe we've built a pretty shitty culture around just boozing away all our problems, spending time with the boys instead of with our families, numbing our emotions with drinking, you know, watching sports, going out fishing all weekend, gambling, porn, whatever it is. That there's people have a vice, and sometimes they're not as unhealthy as others, but they're still a vice. And I believe that we've been taught to do that as a culture, and that's what we're teaching our kids. And I reckon it's time that we fucking changed that. So that's what I'm about. That's my big part of my mission here. And, you know, I also believe that bloody fly. And I also believe that the root cause of a lot of that, I'm going to kill this prick, he comes near me again. And I also believe that the root cause of a lot of that is, you know, financial stress and not knowing what the hell you want to do in life, living a life that's void of passion, just getting up and going through the motions every day. I think we start taking care of those root decisions, show men what some real examples of a healthy masculine man is, get men back in their families, back in the homes. And again, for me, part of that is believing in something bigger than yourself as well. You know, I believe in God for you, whether it's the universe, whether you believe in just a life as a big energy force and we're all part of it, whatever the bloody hell your frame of reference is, it doesn't bother me. I just think that having something that's bigger than yourself, that you put some trust and some faith in, is a really good way to navigate through life as well. And then putting faith that there's someone else, something else, the universe, a God, whatever it may be for you, something else out there that knows who you are, what you're supposed to be doing, the path you're supposed to be on, and entrusting yourself to that entity, and then giving the gratitude back to that entity when you get through the other side. I believe that's a huge part of being a full, whole, healthy man, person. Doesn't matter. Right, that's enough for me. That's enough for the average man for this week. Episode number 208. Hope you guys bloody well enjoyed that. Signing out from far north Queensland. Check you next time from maybe down Agnes Water somewhere. Take it easy. Peace.